ways, Dorothy Day was a typical grandmother.
I see my grandmother as someone who was very ordinary, but also very extraordinary. I mean, I understood that she was different.
Different because Dorothy Day was so often on the front lines, protesting war and nuclear buildup, creating houses of hospitality for the hungry and homeless, and earning her place on the FBI watch list as a dangerous American.
Yeah, Dorothy Day is a big troublemaker.
As a young journalist, Dorothy Day campaigned for those in need.
Her work keeps putting her front and center in the social movements of the time.
She wrote about workers' rights, child labor. She was attracted to communism, believing it was a way to improve people's lives, all part of a chapter in her own life that would leave its scars. But with the birth of her daughter, Dorothy Day turned from communism and converted to the Catholic faith. There, she discovered a path that for nearly a half-century led her to become one of the greatest champions for the poor America has ever known.
She thought if communism is radical, why shouldn't Christianity be radical? This is radical.
My grandmother always said that she never meant to start houses of hospitality. She never meant to open up soup lines. But what happens when you start writing about these things, people show up at the door.
She wanted the people to exercise their own sense of personal responsibility. You see something that needs to be done, you do it.
But accepting the biblical challenge to be peacemakers also compelled her to become a pacifist without compromise, to use her Catholic worker movement and the newspaper she founded to resist America's intervention in any war. Many believed her behavior was un-American.
She did describe herself as an anarchist.
There's an anarchist dimension to her Christian witness.
Some of the most profound and most rewarding demonstrations that culminated in arrests were with the Catholic worker community.
I think of Dorothy Day as a firecracker that never goes out.
Now this grandmother and anarchist may well be declared a saint.
We'd love to see Dorothy made a saint. For both American middle-class people and for Catholics, they recognized that something extraordinary was going on. They weren't quite sure what to do with it.
She annoyed people because she challenged them.
She would say, "Don't call me a saint. I don't want to be written off that easily."
Well, I think if you take the Lord's words, you'll find they're pretty rigorous. The Sermon on the Mount may be read with great enjoyment, but when it comes to practicing it, it really is an examination of conscience to see how far we go.
Growing up in Algeria, there was a martyr Francois Vane used to pray to, Blessed Charles de Faocould. Even though he was not a saint and was beatified in 2005 by Benedict XVI, Vane admired how he united Muslims and Christians while living in Algeria, and that both shared a French origin.
I didn't have a father. When I was little, I always asked my mom about him. She didn't know what to say, but gave me a picture of Charles de Faocould. My dad had written on the back, "May he protect and love you on my behalf." So Charles de Faocould became my guide.
Charles de Faocould lost his faith as a teen, but discovered his vocation on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. After living in France, Syria, and Nazareth, he went to Algeria to live among the Tuaregs of the Halgar.
He went to live his vocation along with the poor from South Algeria. He learned their language, Tuareg, and made the first Tuareg French dictionary to understand their culture and language better.
In fact, Francois explains the Tuareg saved his life while he was dying of hunger. Charles then realized that Muslims and Christians could dialogue through fraternal unity. This image of Jesus Charles painted is a representation of his conviction, open arms and a red heart, representing God's love for all, whether Christian or Muslim.
He desired a universal fraternity for everyone, to be brothers and sisters. He was modern in how he dialogued with Muslims. He was found to be an example of a Christian who loved, prayed, and didn't live by the sword.
His love fused religious barriers and was renewed with his love for the Eucharist. This altar was made by Charles precisely for adoration.
He understood the sacramental presence of God could reach out and touch those around it without saying a word. The Eucharist had an invisible force to touch others and change the world.
He died as a martyr for the faith in 1916 by raiders who encircled his home. While his canonization date has not yet been announced, his fame and passion for unity is already spreading throughout the world.
Young guy, much like any other young guy that you would know, from Italy, who loved adventure. He loved getting real with life, being real with other people. He loved mountain climbing, did a lot of mountain climbing in his lifetime, loved playing pool, loved kicking back with his mates, was known as the guy with that real cheesy grin who you couldn't avoid smiling if you met him. And everyone loved him. He was just bubbling over with life. He used to lead hikes up into the mountains on the holidays. And be the life of the party at school.
Pier Giorgio non era un supereroe, ci testimonia che tutti con fatica, con dedizione, con tenacia, con costanza possiamo aspirare a essere santi.
La potenza dello spirito di verità, unito a Cristo, lo ha reso moderno testimone della speranza che scaturisce dal Vangelo e della grazia di salvezza operante nel cuore dell'uomo. È diventato così il testimone vivo e il difensore coraggioso di questa speranza a nome dei giovani cristiani del secolo XX.
One of his friends, his name was Angelo, from Italy, he recounts a few stories of Pier Giorgio. They used to go on these house visits together, visiting those who were less fortunate. And Angelo recalls this one occasion when they turned up to a house, and as soon as the door opened, this stench, this foul smell just escaped the house, and Angelo felt sick. But Pier Giorgio just burst through the door cheerfully, went into the house smiling and talking to the other people. And afterwards, Angelo says that he went up to Pier Giorgio and said, "Man, like, how did you do that? It stunk." And Pier Giorgio just turns and says to him, "Remember what Jesus said. What you do to the poor, you do to me. And these people have a light that surrounds them that we don't have. There's this other side to blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. And that's what we remember."
La figura di Pier Giorgio è sicuramente una figura che parla al cuore di tutti i giovani. Forse la testimonianza più grande e più bella l'ho vista a Sydney. Pier Giorgio è venuto con noi, pellegrino a Sydney fisicamente, perché le sue spoglie sono state portate nella cattedrale di Sydney. Ed è stato incredibile vedere come la figura di questo giovane torinese fosse visitata da giovani di tutti i colori, di tutte le razze, di tutte le lingue. Tutti questi giovani hanno visitato notte e giorno la cattedrale per incontrare Pier Giorgio, per parlare con lui nel silenzio della cattedrale, nel silenzio della meditazione e della preghiera.
Years after he's died, we remember him because he did something different. He lived for something higher, something greater. And that was God. And he couldn't help but love. He couldn't help but be joyful. He couldn't help but give everything that he had to everybody else. Because God was the reason for his heartbeat.